I found all my belongings in a pile on the front porch. I was so angry, but I knew that I had no choice. Carry and left. Filled with anger, I made my way to a park that was nearby where I could sit at one of the picnic benches so I could collect my thoughts. Living on the street is no joke. I can assure you that the people that are forced to do not want to do so. Personally, I would never have assumed that I would one day be among such people, but I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Hero, and I grew up in a very wealthy family. My father was the owner of a tech company, and he always made it obvious that he expected my brother Theo and I to one day take over the company. He would constantly make everything a competition. My brother and I used to play baseball, and although I tried my best, I just could never play as well as Theo.
Hero, why didn't you get a home run like your brother? Are you weak?
Sorry, Dad, but I tried my best.
Your best wasn't good enough. Your uncle used to use such excuses when he and I controlled my company. It was talk like that made me force him out. I expect better from you and Theo.
He would always bring up the fact that he had forced his brother out of the company, as if treating family like disposable items somehow made him look powerful and strong, rather than cruel and heartless. It didn't help that Theo enjoyed the competition, as he always felt he was winning, and so he didn't mind it so much. Literally, everything we did became a game where the prize was our father's love and approval. Eventually, I just gave up though, as it was abundantly obvious that no matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't compete. So instead, I focused on school. I was especially good when it came to computers and programming. As we neared the end of high school, I was getting ready to apply to colleges and was dreading asking my father if he would help me with paying for it. I knew that he would pay for Theo's schooling, but I wasn't sure if that extended to me as well. After a lot of worry, I finally found the courage to ask him, "Dad, can I ask you something?"
Oh, what do you want?
Sorry, but I'm applying to colleges, and I wanted to know if you could help pay for it.
Ha 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 ha. Are you serious? I can't believe that you would think that I would want to help you.
Well, aren't you paying for Theo's schooling?
Of course I am. But I thought that you knew.
Knew what exactly?
That once you graduate, that you're out of the house. You'll be entirely on your own. And if you think you can afford college, then go for it.
But I have no money. How am I supposed to afford a place to live, let alone school?
That's your problem. As far as I'm concerned, you should have tried harder and fought for your place in this family.
I was terrified and couldn't believe he was being so callous. Not only were my dreams of going to college destroyed, but I worried that without my father's help that I would be in real trouble. Sure, enough though, the day after graduation. I found all my belongings in a pile on the front porch. I was so angry, but I knew that I had no choice, and so I gathered up as much as I could carry and left. Filled with anger, I made my way to a park that was nearby where I could sit at one of the picnic benches so I could collect my thoughts. I really didn't know what to do. The hours flew by, and before I knew it, night was falling, and so I made a pillow out some of my clothes and slept under a picnic table. In the morning, I found that all of my things were stolen, except the items on my body or the clothes I was sleeping on. Annoyed, I started to search for them, but could not find anything. I didn't know what to do. I wish I could say that I handled the situation well, but I just sat down on a bench, cried for hours. Weeks before, I was living comfortably and planning out my future, and now I was abandoned by my family and living on the streets with no money.
Hey there! Listen, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you look like you're in the thick of some bad luck.
Yeah, my father just kicked me out of the house. I have no money and nothing except the clothes on my body.
Well, if you're hungry, you can come with me to the homeless shelter. The food isn't great there, but it's a free meal.
I was hungry, and I had nothing else to lose, so I followed him to a shelter where they were serving a hot meal. He was right. It wasn't anything special, but it was hot, and it was free. That night, we stayed there at the shelter and slept on cots in a large gymnasium, along with dozens of other people. John told me all about his life and how he had lived on the street for years after he had lost his job. He couldn't afford rent and lost his family and his home. Even after all that, though, he hadn't lost his spirit, as he still had goals to turn his life around. He just needed a chance. After that day, John and I became good friends. He looked out for me and kept me safe, and taught me where to go for help. Which doctors would treat homeless people for free, where to get food, and where to keep warm when winter came. That first winter living on the streets was the hardest as I had no winter clothes. Luckily, I made some money from begging and was able to get a winter coat and some additional pants and shirts from a thrift shop, and layered them, so that I looked twice as big as I actually was. By spring I had lost a lot of weight. Living at home I was rather heavy, as I didn't get a lot of exercise, but since there was barely enough to eat, I began to shed weight quickly. In the spring though, something incredibly unexpected happened. John and I were at the shelter for dinner when a man dressed in a very nice suit came into the shelter and started asking each person something while holding a photograph. Finally, he made his way over to us, and when he showed me the picture, I stared at him for a second. He looked like my father, and then I looked at the photograph and saw that it was a picture of me. "Excuse me, gentlemen, but this is a picture of my nephew. Have you seen him?" I wasn't surprised that my uncle hadn't recognized me. I did have a lot of facial hair, and I was incredibly dirty. Plus, the last time we had seen each other was over 12 years ago. I might know where he is, but what do you want from him? Please tell me where he is. His father kicked him out of his home over half a year ago, and I only found out last night. I want to give him the option to come and stay with me. But why would he do that? Well, because he's family. Unfortunately, his father has forgotten about the rest of the family, but I haven't. Please, this man needs my help. I really hope that you're telling the truth, Uncle, because I could really use some good news for once. My uncle nearly passed out from excitement. He couldn't imagine his luck at finding me, but was incredibly grateful that he did. He begged me to come with him to his home so that he could feed me and offer me a permanent place to stay. I told him that I would, but only if John could come too. Surprisingly, my uncle looked at John and asked if he would like to come as well. My uncle had literally no problem opening his house, not only to the nephew he barely knew, but to a total stranger as well. Both John and I shrugged our shoulders and then went with him to his house. It was a massive mansion, easily the same size as my father's had been. That night, I slept in a large bed with a belly so full that it hurt. My uncle had been true to his word. He had personally cooked us a large meal and fed us until we begged him to stop. He then gave each of us amazing rooms and offered for them to be ours for as long as we wanted. I was skeptical about this generous offer though, and asked him about it. "Hey, listen. It's not like I don't appreciate the help, but why are you doing this? Your father is a cruel man. When I heard that he had kicked you out and had given your brother a large share of the company, I knew that I couldn't let that stand. So, I went out and tried to find you, but it took nearly 2 months before I did. I just want to support you the way that your father should have." It sounded too good to be true, but I was tempted to believe him and give him a chance. At first, he was a bit standoffish, but as time went on, he began to really open up, and I was surprised to feel like my uncle was becoming something of a father figure to me. He even introduced me to the rest of the family that I had never known. There were so many cousins, and I found that I got along well with all of them. As time passed, my uncle urged me to go to school like I had always planned and even volunteered to pay for it. I couldn't believe my good fortune and took him up on the offer, but was curious as to why he would do such a thing. "Uncle, I really do appreciate everything, but why are you doing so much for me?" "Well, I can't have children of my own, and so when I heard that my brother had disowned you, I was angry beyond words. He had 2 wonderful sons and had discarded one for no reason at all, and I couldn't have any. It didn't seem fair. So I got the idea that if he wasn't going to help you, then I would. I know I'm not your father, but I want more than anything to see you succeed, and maybe one day see me as a fatherly figure. I love you, hero, and I believe in you." It was very touching, and true to his word, he did pay for my schooling, and even offered me a job in his company when I graduated. Not only that, but he also offered John a job as well in the security department. Both John and I did really well in our new positions and thrived, which made my uncle very happy. Then one day, though, we got a call from my father. "Hey, brother, listen, I need you to invest in my company." "Invest? Why would I do that?" "No reason. I just could use the additional cash flow right now. Besides, you know that one day, you'll need me to do the same for you." As it turned out, my father had given Theo control of the company's finances as a test to see if he could handle it, and he failed miserably. He spent the company money faster than they could generate it on parties and gambling. In fact, he spent so much money that the company was on the verge of bankruptcy. "I'll only invest if you give me a controlling share of your company. If not, then you won't see $1 from me." My uncle was no fool. He knew that my father would never repay the favor. Desperate, my father agreed, and overnight my uncle then owned both companies. He immediately demoted my father and brother to just manager roles with no control over any of the company's assets. With my help, he was able to bring my father's company out of financial ruin and make it profitable again. Okay, hero. I'm going to give you your father's company. You will be the sole owner, and I know that you will do great. Are you sure? Very sure. It will be up to you if you want to keep your father and brother employed. They are still family after all, but I would understand if you just wanted to fire them as well. I won't lie. I did have the urge to fire them, but keeping them as low-level managers felt more like a punishment. They do beg me from time to time to promote them, but I always tell them that they haven't proven that they deserve a promotion yet. I have no idea why they continue to work for me and why they don't quit. I don't make their jobs particularly hard, mind you, but they have no hope of ever taking the company back from me. And since I took over, the company has never been as profitable, and the employees constantly tell me that the company is a much better place to work for since I took over. Honestly, it feels so odd that my father had pitted my brother and I against each other and wanted us to compete for the prize of who would one day own the company. And even though I stopped playing his games, I still ended up winning in the end. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel.
Mr. and Mrs. Anderson, after a thorough examination, it is my professional opinion that Benjamin is on the autism spectrum.
I felt a mix of emotions upon hearing that. Excitement that we finally knew what was going on with our son, confusion on what caring for Ben would look like, and fear about the challenges he would go through growing up. So what does that mean for Benjamin?
Simply put, he may face challenges in developing communication and social skills.
It was at that point that Oliver got up and walked out of the office. My name is Emily. I'm married to my husband, Oliver, and the mother to our first child, Benjamin. Things were perfect between me and Oliver before our son was born. Our marriage was bliss. My pregnancy was easy too, and with Oliver there to help take care of me, we had nothing to worry about. A few weeks later, when my due date arrived, I gave birth to a healthy baby boy, and Oliver and I were overjoyed. Our families were thrilled too, and they immediately took to Benjamin, spoiling him rotten, even if he was just a baby. And as he grew up, he appeared to be like a normal child. He learned to walk on time, and he seemed as happy as we were. Then things started to change. While Benjamin was still a toddler, I started to notice that he was different from the other kids. They were all talkative and making friends with the other children, but Benjamin didn't. He wouldn't make eye contact with anyone, and his communication skills took a lot longer to develop than it did for his peers. I decided to bring it up to Oliver one night after Benjamin had gone to bed. Oliver?
Yes, dear?
Have you noticed how Benjamin is different from the other kids his age?
Different? How so?
Benjamin won't make eye contact with people, and he's taking a lot longer to develop communication skills. Don't you think that's odd?
No. Some kids are just slow to talk. He'll be fine.
Still, I want to visit a doctor and see if there's anything wrong with him.
Honey, we don't have to do that.
Please. I would feel better if we knew what's going on with Ben.
All right.
A couple of days later, we had an appointment with a specialist. While the doctor examined Benjamin, Oliver and I had to stay in the waiting room, and as time went on, we got more and more nervous. It's been hours. The doctor said it shouldn't take this long.
We shouldn't have come down here at all. There's nothing wrong with our son. I don't know why I let you talk me into this.
Shortly after that, the doctor invited us into his office. He had us sit down before breaking the news to us.
Mr. and Mrs. Anderson, after a thorough examination, it is my professional opinion that Benjamin is on the autism spectrum.
I felt a mix of emotions upon hearing that. Excitement that we finally knew what was going on with our son, confusion on what caring for Ben would look like, and fear about the challenges he would go through growing up. So what does that mean for Benjamin?
Simply put, he may face challenges in developing communication and social skills.
It was at that point that Oliver got up and walked out of the office. I asked him to stay, but nothing I said made him turn around. I didn't know what else to do, so I went back into the doctor's office with Benjamin. When I sat down, the doctor started giving me resources for parents of autistic children, and what I can expect when raising Ben. After we'd gotten home, I noticed that Oliver was nowhere to be found. I texted him, asking where he was, and his response surprised me.
I can't do this, Emily. I didn't sign up for a life like this. I want to leave and start fresh. We can have another child. A normal one.
Oliver, how can you say something like that? Benjamin is our son. I won't abandon him. He needs us now more than ever. We made vows to each other, and we made vows to him. I won't break my promises.
I can't do this, Emily. I never signed up to handle a burden like this.
Oliver, please don't say that.
I won't be tied down by our freak of a son. I can't.
Oliver never came back to the house that night, and I ended up taking Benjamin to my parents' house. Through my tears, I explained to my parents what happened at the doctor's office and what Oliver said. It was then that I realized I couldn't stay married to someone who could so easily abandon their own child and act like they don't matter. My parents understood, and they told me I could stay with them for as long as I needed to. It wasn't easy, but after a few days, I reached out to Oliver. Oliver, we need to talk.
All right.
I want a divorce. After what you said about our son, I can't stay married to you. I'm going to take my money out of our account and find a home for me and Benjamin, and I will raise him on my own.
Is there any way I can convince you to abandon Benjamin and restart our lives with a normal child?
When I read his message, I couldn't help how angry I got. How could the man I married become such a heartless monster? This is our son he's talking about. No, you will never convince me to leave my child behind just because he's different. I can't believe I ever married a man like you. I'll be sending you the divorce papers this week. I kept my word and met with Oliver later in the week to go through with the divorce. He tried again to get me to change my mind about Benjamin, but when he saw that I was serious, he gave up and signed the divorce papers. I felt relieved that I would no longer be married to someone who wouldn't love my child, but at the same time, it was also sad to lose someone that I once loved and started a new life with. After the divorce, I moved me and Benjamin to an apartment near my parents' house. It was a lot smaller than I was used to, and it was a struggle having to adjust, but my parents came by every day to help and provide support. It's been years at this point, and Benjamin is close to graduating high school. As he grew up, he developed some social skills, but most importantly, he discovered his passion for playing the piano. He's able to use music as a way to express what he's feeling and connect with others in a way that he can't when using words. He's performed at school and in auditoriums in front of large audiences, and he's gotten very popular over the past few years in our town. His interest in music started back in elementary school, when the teacher put on classical music while the students were working, and Benjamin lit up when he heard the piano. He kept trying to mimic how it was played, and the teacher suggested to me that I start him with piano lessons. I did so, and it was like he transformed into a different child. Benjamin played for his school's musicals and shows, and he's even enrolled in talent competitions, earning him prize money. I keep the money stored away for him in case of a rainy day, or he needs to tune up his piano. In high school, he started playing in the town hall during special events the people put on, and everyone loves to hear him play.
Oh, he sounds like an angel playing like that.
I know. I couldn't be happier with putting him through all his piano lessons.
Are you his mother?
I am.
You should be so proud of your son's talent.
Thank you, and I am. I couldn't be any prouder of him. All of a sudden, after one of Benjamin's performances, I got a message from Oliver. I was rather surprised. We hadn't spoken since the day we got divorced.
Hi, how are you and Benjamin doing?
What is this about, Oliver?
I just want to know how my son is doing. From what I hear, he's quite the piano player.
He is.
And I also hear that he's won some prize money too. Maybe he'd be willing to share it with his father?
Is that what this is all about? Money? That is so selfish of you.
It's not selfish. It's selfish of you to keep the money all to yourself. Benjamin's talent has brought him success, and I'm his father. I have a right to some of the share of that success.
We don't owe you anything, Oliver. You walked away when things got tough. You left when we needed you the most. Since then, I've built a good life for me and Benjamin, and I won't let you jeopardize that. His success is his own, and you have no claim to it. What do you even need the money for anyway?
I've made some mistakes and I need money to get back on my feet.
That isn't our problem. I couldn't believe Oliver's nerve. He never wanted to be a part of Benjamin's life, and then he wanted to reap the rewards of it. I was so angry, I blocked Oliver then and there. That didn't stop him from showing up to Benjamin's next performance, though.
Sir, you can't enter without a ticket. Please, I just want to see my son. He's the one performing.
I had been waiting by the door so I could hear something going on in the lobby. I left the theater, and I became angry when I saw Oliver there. You have no right to be here.
Emily, please.
You chose to walk away from your son, Oliver. You don't get to show up now because you think you can benefit from Benjamin's success.
I just need some help, Emily.
You should have thought about that before you walked away. Oliver tried to rush past the security guard into the theater, but the guard stopped him. The manager of the theater called the police on him when he wouldn't calm down. And once I showed them the messages of him begging for Benjamin's money, they charged him with stalking and harassment. It wasn't easy having to become a single mother and provide everything and more for my child, but being able to see him blossom into a talented young man while his father sits in a jail cell, in debt and unwanted, has made it all worth it. He threatened to hurt Carissa if they didn't leave immediately. The police immediately pulled out their weapons and pointed them at Carissa's boyfriend. They were unable to shoot him, though, because he was holding her in front of him and using her as a human shield. I couldn't even believe what I was seeing, and things only got even crazier after what happened next. Out of nowhere, Devin snuck around behind his dad and tackled him to the ground. Hi, my name is Casey, and I just recently turned 29 years old. I work as a caregiver at a nursing home, and I love it because it is an extremely fulfilling job. The only thing is that I work crazy long hours, and it affects my mental health sometimes. What I do from time to time after work to help with my mood is I go to my favorite ice cream shop and get a large chocolate banana sundae. This helps me because I have a crazy sweet tooth and I love candy and ice cream. Anyways, it was one of those days and I had just got off work, and all I wanted to do was get my sundae and go home and rest. When all of the sudden, as I was in line for my ice cream, a little kid cut me in line and started yelling at me.
Get out of my way, you fat pig. You don't need any ice cream. I'm cutting you. I want my ice cream first.
Whoa, watch your mouth. That is not appropriate at all. Where is your mother?
I hate my mother. She sucks. And so do you. Now get out of here, you fatty.
I was astounded at how horrible this little kid was being, and I didn't know what to do. I flagged down the manager, and he came over to see what I wanted. I told him that this child was here unattended, and I recommended that he finds his mother. When the little boy heard me say this, he got very angry.
You snitched on me, fatty? Well, you know what they say, don't you? Snitches get stitches.
Without warning, the little boy jumped on me and tackled me to the ground, and began hitting me over and over again. The manager had to intervene and get the boy off of me, but I was beaten up pretty badly. I had a black eye and my nose was bleeding. I couldn't believe the behavior of this boy, and I immediately demanded the police to be called. While waiting for the police, I tended to my wounds, but the little boy continued to call me names.
I got you pretty good, didn't I, fatso?
Once the police arrived, I told them the whole situation, and they were puzzled. What could have caused this young boy to act out in such a horrible way? After interrogating the child for a bit, they finally found out his name and called up his mother and told her what had happened. The mother said she would be there shortly, and the police told me to wait around for the mother so I could explain the situation to her as well. Once the mother arrived and walked into the ice cream shop, I practically fainted. Carissa! Casey? You see, Carissa was my long-lost sister. We had stopped communicating years ago when she decided to marry this guy that our family hated. He was this creepy biker dude who lived a life of crime and was a raging alcoholic. We drew the line when one day he dropped off Carissa while he was drunk, which meant he had been drinking and driving. We had told Carissa that she was not allowed to see this horrible man anymore, but she swore he was the love of her life and that she couldn't live without him. She told us she would not speak to us anymore if we didn't accept him, because she wouldn't stay around to hear anything bad about her man. And just like that, my sister was no longer a part of my life. But that was years ago, and now here she was in my favorite ice cream shop. What are you doing here?
I'm here to get my son. Did he hurt you?
That's your son? That's my nephew? How could he grow up with such horrible manners? At that moment, Carissa began crying. She explained that it was all because of the boy's dad. She told me that her son's name was Devin, and that he was just 8 years old, but he was already headed down a horrible path. She said that she and her biker boyfriend had accidentally got pregnant, and she gave birth to Devin. She told me she didn't tell any of our family because of how ashamed she was to have a child before getting married. Now that I had a better understanding of what was going on, it was time to get to the bottom of why this was happening. How could it be that such a young boy was already acting out and being abusive towards women? I realized that there must be a pattern. Just then, I noticed there were some bruises on my sister's neck, and my heart sank when I realized what must be happening. I realized that Devin was probably acting out exactly what he sees his dad do all the time. Devin's dad must be abusing my sister. I pointed this out to the police, who agreed with my assumption.
Carissa, where is your boyfriend now? We would like to have a word with him.
Oh, well, he is probably at home drinking. He is usually completely drunk by noon every day, so be careful because he gets aggressive when he is drunk.
We all hopped into one of the police cruisers and drove to Carissa's boyfriend's house to confront him about his abusive tendencies. The police knocked on the door with Casey next to them, and Carissa's boyfriend came to the door. He was extremely drunk and he looked angry.
This is the police. Please step outside so we can have a word with you about the possibility of domestic violence.
No way, this is my house, and I refuse to be told what to do. Also, you're fat and ugly, so leave.
Sir, don't get stupid. We can do this the easy way, or we can do this the hard way.
I can't go to jail. You'll never take me away.
As drunk as he was, Carissa's boyfriend reached out quickly and grabbed her and pulled out a knife and held it out towards the police, warning them to stay away. He threatened to hurt Carissa if they didn't leave immediately. The police immediately pulled out their weapons and pointed them at Carissa's boyfriend. They were unable to shoot him, though, because he was holding her in front of him and using her as a human shield. I couldn't even believe what I was seeing, and things only got even crazier after what happened next. Out of nowhere, Devin snuck around behind his dad and tackled him to the ground. Once he was on the ground, the police rushed over and handcuffed him, and immediately made sure Carissa was okay. Oh my gosh. Carissa, are you okay?
Yes, I'm okay now. I'm just glad it's all over. Thank you for being so brave, Devin. I knew you were a good kid deep down.
The police acknowledged Devin's good deed and told him he had done well. But then they asked me the awkward question I was waiting for. They asked me if I wanted to press charges for the attack carried out on me by Devin. I decided that in light of everything that had just happened, and the fact that Devin just saved my sister's life, that I wouldn't press charges. Devin was happy to hear that I was giving him a second chance, but I knew I had to talk to him.
So I'm not going to jail.
Not today, Devin. But listen to me very closely. If you ever attack a woman again, just know that there will be serious consequences. This is not a joke, and not something you can take lightly. If you don't straighten your life out, you will end up just like your dad, and you don't want that, do you?
No, I don't. I'm sorry, Auntie.
That was the first time I had heard someone call me Auntie, and I liked it. Devin gave me a hug and apologized again, and I told him I forgave him. But now that Devin was dealt with, it was time to deal with Carissa's boyfriend.
I don't know how you could do this to me. I loved you so much.
Shut up, woman. You were never all that important to me. When I get out of these cuffs, I'm going to beat you so bad. I'll kill you if I get out of here.
See, what Carissa's boyfriend didn't realize was that the police's body cameras were still rolling, and they had picked up every word that Carissa's boyfriend had just said, including the part about him threatening to kill Carissa if he was ever let out of custody. When it was finally time for his trial, the judge had more than enough to work with. He was charged with multiple counts of domestic abuse, and because of the incriminating footage, he was also charged with attempted murder. With all of this, the judge was able to sentence him to the maximum sentence for his crimes, which was life in prison. With that horrible man far away, me and my family were finally able to reconnect with our long-lost family member, Carissa. And on top of that, my parents were finally able to meet their grandson, Devin. The only problem is that sometimes I worry that Devin will grow up to be like his father, and I'm not sure if he learned a good enough lesson that day. Although I am beyond happy with where Carissa's evil boyfriend ended up, sometimes I'm not sure if I did the right thing by giving Devin a second chance. Sometimes I think I should have pressed charges on him after all. What do you think?
Wow, this place is rather nice. I can't wait to move in.
Well, actually, I'm sorry, Jason, but your credit check came back dangerously low.
Well, this is my first home, so I understand that it would be low as I need to build it up, but that shouldn't matter. With my part-time job, I can easily afford this place.
No, Jason, I know that you can afford it, but you have a lot of debt. You have over $50,000 in debt from personal loans and a line of credit. No one will rent to you because of that.
I didn't know what to say. I had never signed up for any loans or a line of credit. There had to be some kind of mistake. Hi, my name is Jason, and when I was growing up, my mother was a complex woman. She was never really a terrible person, but she definitely had her moments where I questioned if she even loved me or not. She was never cruel, really, although she was occasionally abusive, but only when she lost her temper, and thankfully, that didn't happen all that often. Although, when it did, it was best to completely avoid her. The real problem was that she was incapable of saving money. No matter how much money she made or was given, she would spend it all and be flat broke soon after it went into her hands. I never knew for sure, but I had always assumed that this was the reason why my father had left us when I was very young. My earliest memory of my mother's issues was when I was around 7 or 8 years old. I had received some money as a gift from my grandparents for my birthday. It wasn't much, just $20, but to a kid, that was a fortune. I remember putting it in a little piggy bank that I kept on my dresser. It had a slot in the top where I could drop my coins and dollar bills, and I thought it was the safest place in the world for my money. One day, I went to my piggy bank to check on my savings. I was planning to buy a new video game with the money that I had saved up, and I was excited to see how close I was to my goal. But when I opened the piggy bank, the money was gone. Every single dollar had vanished, and all that remained were a few coins. I was devastated. Confused, I looked all over the place, thinking that the money had somehow fallen out. When I didn't find anything, I went to my mother, tears in my eyes, and asked her if she had seen my money. "Hey Mom, I had over $40 in my piggy bank, but it's gone. Have you seen it?"
No, sorry, sweetheart, I haven't. Are you sure that you placed it in there? Maybe you left it somewhere else.
She feigned innocence, claiming she had no idea what had happened to it. Her response felt off to me, although I didn't understand why at the time. Deep down, I wanted to believe her, but I knew something didn't feel right. It wasn't the first time money had mysteriously disappeared when I left it unattended in my room. When I got older, I eventually learned to hide whatever money I got inside of an air vent behind my bed. It was difficult to get to, but thankfully, my mother never found it. My mother will sometimes disappear for days, leaving me at home alone with no cook food, and she will sometimes go partying or drinking and hanging out with men. She will often come back drunk. As the years went by, I began to notice that unlike most of my friends, that there was always new things in my house. Sometimes it would be a new appliance, or other times my mom would have a whole new set of clothes. It wasn't until I was a teenager that I began to question where my mother was getting the money for all these purchases. On top of that, I began to see that she was spending money on so many things that we didn't even need. After all, we had 3 fridges, 2 stoves, and like 8 blenders. It made no sense at all for us to have that many appliances, especially since it was only the 2 of us that were living in the house. When I was 16, I recall one of my uncles coming over and he was furious with my mother.
"Hey, sister, this is the last straw. I told you that if you stole from me or Mom ever again, that I would kick you out of the family. Where is it?"
Where is what?
You know exactly what I'm looking for. Mom's wedding ring. It's missing, and I know for a fact that you stole it to pawn it. So where is it?
I don't have it. I can't believe that you would accuse me of stealing from you.
I knew my mom was lying, as I had seen her with a ring the day before, and later in the day, she came home with dozens of shopping bags. My uncle left furious with my mother, but was unable to prove that she had taken anything. I was so disappointed in her, but I also didn't want her to get angry at me, and so I kept quiet. After that, I started to hide anything of values in secret places, like under my mattress, in a drawer, or even buried in my closet. If I bought a new game, I hid it. If I bought a nice pair of shoes, I hid them. It was an exhausting game of cat and mouse, constantly trying to outsmart my own mother. But I knew that if she found anything that she felt that she could sell, that it was as good as gone and that there would be no stopping her. As time went on, our extended family slowly began to drift away. Eventually, it was just my mother and I, which saddened me greatly as I missed spending time with my cousins. A few years passed, and I tried to keep an eye on my mother, but she was impossible to control. Without our family to prey on, my mother began to steal from our neighbors and her co-workers. It was incredibly obvious when she would steal from people, as she would always be in a great mood and buy something extravagant. I knew that this was a terrible situation, and so I made plans to move out as soon as I could. It was rather hard though, as I was forced to give her most of the money that I made at my part-time job. But I saved and saved, and I knew that as soon as I turned 18, that I would have enough to move out. I wouldn't be able to get anything more than a one-bedroom apartment, but that would still be wonderful compared to where I was at. The week leading up to my birthday, I went to go and look at an apartment. Wow, this place is rather nice. I can't wait to move in.
Well, actually, I'm sorry, Jason, but your credit check came back dangerously low.
Well, this is my first home, so I understand that it would be low as I need to build it up, but that shouldn't matter. With my part-time job, I can easily afford this place.
No, Jason, I know that you can afford it, but you have a lot of debt. You have over $50,000 in debt from personal loans and a line of credit. No one will rent to you because of that.
I didn't know what to say. I had never signed up for any loans or a line of credit. There had to be some kind of mistake. And so I went and spoke to a financial advisory to figure out what my realtor had been talking about. As it turned out, there were 2 credit cards, a line of credit, and 3 separate personal loans from 3 different banks. And to my surprise, all of them were maxed out and totaled even more than what the realtor had said. According to my advisor, I was in debt by over $80,000. How is that even possible?
Well, it can happen sometimes to young people that are given credit and get in over their head. But if we come up with a plan, we can pay these off and get your life back on track.
No, I don't think you understand. I turn 18 in a few days. And I never signed up for any of these things, so where did they come from?
Wait a minute? How old did you say?
And sure enough, when the advisor looked into all the accounts, he saw that the first credit card had been given to me when I was only 8. And that since then, I had gotten another credit card or account every year since then. The thing was that I couldn't apply of any of these accounts, since I was underage, which meant that someone was signing me up for them. It only took the advisor a few minutes to figure out that it was my mother who had used my name to scam people out of tens of thousands of dollars. The advisor told me, though, that I had 2 choices. I could bite the bullet and pay the debt and protect my mother, or I could turn her into the police and then, when she was arrested, my debts would be cleared as it would become obvious that I hadn't signed up for the accounts to begin with. After the way that my mother had treated me over the years and how callously she had placed me into crushing debt, I felt no sympathy for her. In fact, going down to the police station and turning her over to them was incredibly satisfying. I remember the look on her face when the officers came to the door.
How could you do this to your own mother?
Easily. In fact, it was even easier than it was for you to put me into horrific debt. How could you use your own son like your own personal bank? She stopped talking after that. Not long after being arrested, she was sentenced to 25 years in prison for the corruption of a minor, for fraud, and identity theft. The judge in her case wanted to make an example out of her, and so he came down hard on her. She was hysterical when they dragged her off to prison. After all, she knew that she would be spending quite a few years behind bars. Being her only next of kin, I was given her belongings, but I was forced to sell the vast majority of them along with the house and car in order to pay for all the debts that she had accumulated. I was finally free from her irresponsible spending habits, but I was no further ahead than I was to begin with. The debts that were under my name were cleared thankfully, as it was proven that I had not been the one to sign up for all that debt, and as such, it was nullified. However, I was still flat broke. But that's when things took a turn for the better. My uncle had heard about my mother going away to jail, and he found me and offered for me to move in with him.
Oh, Jason, I know that you and your mother are completely different. I just wanted you to know that I was hoping that maybe we could finally get to know each other now. Would you be interested in moving in with me?
Maybe. What would I have to pay you?
Pay me? You wouldn't have to pay anything. In fact, I was wondering if you needed help paying for school. I'm not rich, but I can help pay for things like books, and I even have a spare car you can use to get to and from school.
I had always assumed that college was something that I wouldn't get to do since I was so incredibly poor. But here was my uncle offering to help me go to school. I couldn't believe my luck. True to his word, my uncle helped me out so much. Thanks to him, I was able to pay off my school debt incredibly quickly. And over the years that I lived with him, we grew really close. He became the father that I never had growing up, and we still visit with one another at least once a week. Thanks to my uncle's help, I was able to become a lawyer. Somehow my mother found out what I had become and begged and pleaded with me to represent her so that she would try for an appeal. I don't think I've ever laughed so hard at someone on the phone ever before that day. When I was able to breathe, I calmly told her that she was a truly terrible person and that she belonged in prison. It didn't make up for all the pain and hurt that she had caused me, but it did feel good to turn her down like that. And so, I'm doing much better now. Unlike my mother, I keep my house nice and tidy, and I live comfortably within my means, and I live in a penthouse suite on the 25th floor. Life is pretty good right now. Also, since I moved in with my uncle, I was able to reconnect with all the family members that my mother had driven away. I can't tell you how good it feels to be invited to family functions again. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.